Ladies and gentlemen, there is a secret known only to those who dare to control their inner world, a secret that separates the defeated from the victorious, the hesitant from the bold, the anxious from the calm. It is this: act as if nothing bothers you. Now, I don't mean to pretend that life is perfect. Far from it. Life will test you. People will doubt you. Circumstances will challenge your patience, your courage, and your belief in yourself. But here's the truth. Your power lies not in what happens to you, but in how you respond. You see, when you act as if nothing bothers you, you're not denying reality. You are mastering it. You're telling the world, I am greater than my problems. I am unmoved by temporary storms. I control my attitude. Nothing else does. Think of the most successful, admired individuals. Do they collapse under pressure? Do they give power to criticism or fear? No, they remain steady, composed, certain, even when everything around them is chaos. That's not arrogance, that's mental discipline. That's the quiet strength of someone who has trained the mind to lead the emotions. When you act as if nothing bothers you, the world starts to treat you differently. Why? Because confidence is magnetic, calmness is rare, and those who can carry themselves with grace under fire command respect. But let's be clear, this mindset is not born in comfort. It is forged in discomfort. It's built every time you choose not to react in anger, every time you walk through fear without showing it on your face, every time you say, "This will not break me." It doesn't matter what your past looks like. It doesn't matter what your bank account says or what your critics shout. If you carry yourself with the unshakable belief that nothing can rattle your peace, then you become unstoppable. Act as if nothing bothers you, not because you're pretending, but because you've decided to live from a place of inner authority. Let the storms come. Let the voices rise. Let the obstacles appear, and smile. Stand tall, speak with power, move with purpose, because when you act as if nothing bothers you, eventually nothing will. Power lies in your response, not your circumstances. This idea may seem simple at first glance, but it holds a depth that, when fully understood, can reshape the course of your life. Every person encounters challenges, difficulties, disappointments, and moments of frustration. No one escapes the tides of change, the setbacks of failure, or the sting of criticism. Life is impartial in handing out adversity, but what life doesn't control, what no external force can govern, is your response. That choice belongs to you and you alone. When a person stumbles, many are quick to blame the situation, the timing, or the people involved. It's easy to point outward. It's convenient to say, "I couldn't succeed because the economy turned," or "I lost because they didn't support me." But none of those things define who you are. What defines you is how you choose to respond to them. You can let a situation harden your heart, or you can let it sharpen your will. You can let a setback discourage you, or you can let it train you. The world often celebrates the outcomes: success, wealth, recognition. But those things are the fruit, not the root. The real root of power lies deep in the soil of mindset. Two people can face the exact same situation and emerge with entirely different futures. One may fall apart, the other may rise. Why? Because one reacts emotionally and impulsively, while the other responds with discipline, with clarity, with intention. The difference is not in the circumstances. It is in the inner attitude. Circumstances are, by nature, unstable. They change. One day you're up, the next day you're down. One moment you're praised, the next you're criticized. But your response, when governed by principles rather than emotions, becomes a fixed point of power. That kind of steadiness intimidates chaos. It weakens the grip of fear. It confuses those who try to shake you. Because when you refuse to be reactive, you take control of the situation, not by force, but by presence. Think of every great leader, every figure who stood tall in the midst of uncertainty. What made them powerful was not the absence of difficulty. It was their response to difficulty. They didn't allow failure to rewrite their identity. They didn't let temporary defeat speak permanent truths into their lives. Instead, they responded with resolve. They said, either silently or aloud, "This situation will not control me. I will decide what it means. I will decide what I do next." It's easy to react when emotions are high. It's natural to feel anger, fear, or sadness when things don't go your way. But the ability to pause, to think, and then to act with clarity, that's a rare power, and it can be developed. It starts with a single decision, the decision to stop giving energy to things you can't control, and instead to give full attention to what you can, your thoughts, your beliefs, your words, your actions. Every time you respond with intention rather than reaction, you strengthen your core. You reinforce the truth that your life is not determined by what happens, but by how you handle what happens. This kind of power doesn't make you cold or indifferent. It makes you unshakable. It allows you to remain steady in the middle of emotional storms. It lets you operate from purpose instead of pressure. What many people fail to realize is that power is not loud. It doesn't always look like aggression or domination. Real power is quiet. It shows itself in restraint, in patience, in consistency. It is the ability to walk through chaos without letting the chaos enter you. It is the courage to stay grounded when everything around you is trying to pull you off course. And once you truly tap into that, once you begin to live from that place of internal mastery, you will see that circumstances no longer dictate the quality of your life. You begin to lead yourself rather than follow your feelings. You begin to carry yourself with dignity even in defeat. And soon, you find that what once shook you no longer holds any power over you, because your focus is no longer on the problem, it's on your position. You become the person who defines the moment rather than being defined by it. This is not theory. This is not philosophy. This is a discipline of the mind that anyone can adopt. It begins by understanding the truth that power is not something given to you by others or handed down by fortune. It is something you build from within, through the choices you make, moment by moment, every time you decide that your response will be greater than your circumstances. Calmness under pressure is a sign of true strength. It's easy to appear composed when everything is going well, when the environment is stable, when plans are unfolding as expected, and when people are treating you with kindness. Almost anyone can smile and keep their head high. But the real test of character comes when things do not go according to plan. It is in those moments, when deadlines are looming, tempers are flaring, and uncertainty surrounds you, that your true strength or lack of it is revealed. Calmness in those critical moments is not weakness, it is mastery. There is a misconception that calmness means passivity or indifference. On the contrary, staying calm in tense situations takes greater discipline than reacting with force or emotion. Anyone can panic. Anyone can lash out when things get uncomfortable. But staying centered, choosing your words carefully, and maintaining your presence when pressure mounts requires deep inner control. It is the hallmark of someone who has learned to govern their emotions rather than be governed by them. In high pressure moments, people tend to look to the calmest person in the room. That person becomes the anchor. They are seen as reliable, grounded, and trustworthy, not because they have all the answers, but because they're not ruled by fear or haste. Their calmness provides stability in chaos, and that, in itself, is leadership. Calmness is not about ignoring problems. It's about facing them with clarity. When your mind is calm, you can see more. You notice patterns others miss. You hear what others are too distracted to process. You make better decisions because you're not caught up in the noise of panic. Pressure reveals whether you are a reactor or a responder. Reactors get swept up by emotion. They act impulsively, often making the situation worse. Responders pause, assess, and then act with precision. That pause, that space between stimulus and response, is where calmness lies, and in that space lies all your power. Most people overlook this because they're conditioned to react immediately. But immediate reactions are often emotional, not rational. True calmness gives you a buffer between the external world and your internal state. Calmness is also contagious. Just as panic spreads quickly in a group, so does steadiness. When you remain calm under pressure, those around you begin to relax as well. Your demeanor sets the tone. Whether in a business meeting, a family conflict, or a personal crisis, your ability to remain centered has an impact that ripples outward. This influence is subtle but powerful. It doesn't demand attention, but it commands respect. Developing calmness requires practice. It comes from deliberately choosing to slow down your reactions. It comes from learning to observe your thoughts instead of being swept away by them. It comes from understanding that pressure is not the enemy, it's a proving ground. Every high pressure situation is an opportunity to strengthen your inner foundation. The more you train yourself to remain calm when you feel tense, the more natural it becomes. Over time, you build an unshakable core, and with that core, you can walk into storms without losing your balance. Calmness does not mean you don't feel stress. It means you don't become stress. You acknowledge the pressure, but you do not let it define you. You let the pressure inform you, not consume you. There is a difference between feeling something and becoming that feeling. A calm person understands that difference and chooses presence over panic. They understand that their energy influences outcomes, so they guard it carefully. People often assume that action is the most important thing in a crisis. But wise action can only come from a calm state of mind. Without calmness, you act out of fear, pride, or desperation. With calmness, you act out of wisdom, vision, and long-term thinking. Calmness allows you to see the big picture. It helps you rise above the temporary noise and focus on what truly matters. And in many cases, that focus is what leads to the best results. The world rewards composure. People follow those who stay poised under pressure. Opportunities are offered to those who don't crack when stakes are high. Whether you're leading a team, managing a conflict, or simply navigating your personal life, your calmness will speak louder than any words. It communicates confidence, reliability, and depth. And most importantly, it shows that you are not at the mercy of circumstance. You are in control of yourself. You are the master of your energy. You are the eye of the storm. Confidence grows when you master your emotions. Confidence is not something that magically appears. It doesn't arrive by chance, and it's not gifted by the approval of others. True confidence is built layer by layer through the disciplined mastery of your inner world. It begins when you realize that emotions, while powerful, do not have to be your ruler. You feel them, but you are not them. And the moment you understand this, a shift begins. Your confidence stops depending on external circumstances and starts drawing from within. Many people chase confidence by trying to change how others see them. They adjust their image, their tone, their appearance, but none of that matters if their emotions control them. A person who is easily rattled, constantly offended, or quick to anger may appear strong for a moment, but their foundation is weak. Confidence that relies on performance, applause, or dominance is a fragile illusion. The real thing is quieter. It's the calm assurance that no matter what happens around you, you remain steady. That assurance comes only when you've wrestled with your emotions and learned how to guide them rather than be guided by them. Emotion is energy in motion. It can work for you or against you. When you haven't trained your emotions, they behave like wild horses. Beautiful, powerful, but unpredictable and potentially destructive. But once you learn to harness them, those same emotions become tools. Fear becomes alertness, anger becomes fuel, sadness becomes reflection, joy becomes momentum. Confidence grows as you learn how to channel what you feel rather than deny or suppress it. Suppression is not mastery. Mastery is awareness, acceptance, and direction. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It is the ability to face fear without letting it paralyze you. It's standing in front of uncertainty, hearing the doubts in your head, feeling the tension in your body, and choosing to act anyway. When you master your emotions, you gain the ability to move forward even when every part of you wants to pull back. That kind of courage builds a quiet strength, and people feel it, even when you say nothing. Emotional mastery also allows you to respond instead of react. This difference, though subtle, is critical. Reactions are impulsive and unfiltered. Responses are thoughtful and controlled. The confident person doesn't need to prove anything. They don't need to shout to be heard or argue to be right. They know who they are, and that knowing comes from repeated experiences of managing their emotional state instead of being overwhelmed by it. There will always be situations that try to provoke you. People will say things designed to throw you off. Circumstances will test your patience and resilience. But when your emotions are under your leadership, you don't give away your power. You don't overreact. You don't internalize every opinion or let every setback define you. You simply keep moving, calm and focused. This emotional control is not about being cold or distant. It's about being intentional. It means choosing your battles, knowing your limits, and protecting your energy. Emotional mastery is also the foundation of self-respect. When you keep your emotions in check, you respect yourself more because you know you're in control. That self-respect deepens your confidence. You trust yourself more because you're no longer afraid of being thrown off by sudden mood swings or emotional hijackings. You don't fear failure as much because you know how to regulate your internal experience regardless of what happens externally. That inner trust is priceless. It's what keeps you grounded when others lose their footing. The strongest people you'll ever meet are not necessarily the loudest or the most aggressive. Often, they're the ones who speak less and observe more. They're composed, not because they don't feel emotion, but because they've trained themselves not to be ruled by it. They may be moved by compassion, inspired by vision, or driven by purpose, but never manipulated by fear, envy, or insecurity. This level of control gives them the confidence to lead, to endure, and to build something lasting. Confidence born from emotional mastery also makes you more consistent. You're not up one day and down the next. You're not confident only when things are going well. You show up the same way again and again, regardless of the mood or moment. That consistency builds trust with yourself and with others. It allows you to take on challenges that others shy away from because you're not afraid of what the situation might make you feel. You've already dealt with your own inner world. Now you're free to deal with the outer one. The world respects those who remain composed. In moments of tension, disagreement, or crisis, people instinctively look to the individual who carries themselves with calm certainty. That person may not have all the answers, but their presence communicates something powerful: stability. Composure is not just about being quiet or restrained. It's about demonstrating control, discipline, and inner strength when the situation tries to shake you. And the more composed you remain under pressure, the more respect you earn, not by force, but by presence. In any room, the person who keeps their emotions in check holds influence. They aren't easily provoked, they don't rush to speak, and they aren't swayed by the noise around them. This steadiness makes them a pillar. It gives others permission to relax, to think, and to trust. People may not consciously understand why they're drawn to someone who is composed, but they feel it. It creates a sense of safety, and where there is safety, there is respect. Composure is not about pretending that nothing affects you. It's about not letting what affects you control you. It is emotional intelligence in action, the ability to feel something deeply, but not let it spill out recklessly. When everyone else is panicking, the composed individual becomes a lighthouse. They remain steady in the storm. That steadiness comes from preparation, discipline, and perspective. They don't need to overreact because they've trained their mind to rise above impulse. Respect is earned not just through words or achievements, but through behavior under pressure. Anyone can talk with confidence when things are going smoothly. But when things fall apart, when emotions rise, tempers flare, and uncertainty fills the air, that's when your character speaks louder than anything you say. The person who remains composed in those moments gains credibility because they show that they can handle not just success, but struggle. That's what people watch for. not how you act when things go right, but how you respond when they go wrong. There is a quiet dignity in composure. It's not loud, it doesn't demand attention, but it cannot be ignored. People notice when someone keeps their integrity intact in the face of criticism. They notice when someone refuses to gossip, to retaliate, or to fall into pettiness. It shows maturity. It shows that the person values control over chaos, peace over pride. And in a world full of noise and emotional volatility, that kind of behavior stands out. Those who remain composed tend to be more persuasive, not because they dominate the conversation, but because they speak from a place of calm conviction. They listen more, they weigh their words, they respond instead of reacting. This makes them more thoughtful, and people respect thoughtfulness. When you speak calmly and clearly in a tense situation, your voice cuts through the noise. People are more likely to follow your lead because they sense you are not controlled by ego or fear. Composure also communicates self-respect. It shows that you are not so easily swayed by the opinions or emotions of others. You don't feel the need to prove your worth by outshouting someone or reacting to every insult. You know who you are, and you won't allow someone else's behavior to pull you out of alignment with that identity. That kind of restraint commands admiration. It tells people that you operate from principle, not impulse. In relationships, both personal and professional, composure creates trust. People want to work with those who can stay calm under pressure. They want to be around those who don't lose control when challenged. If you're the person who can stay composed during conflict, you become the one others lean on. Your value increases not because of titles or talent alone, but because you bring emotional balance into situations that threaten to spiral out of control. It's not about suppressing your feelings, it's about directing them. Composure doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough to choose your responses wisely. It means you care about the long-term outcome more than the short-term release of venting or shouting. It means you know that every moment of pressure is also a moment of visibility. People are watching, whether you realize it or not. And what they see in those moments determines whether they trust you, respect you, and follow you. Being composed doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be self-aware. It asks you to pause, to breathe, to remember your values before you act. That pause creates space for clarity. It helps you act with purpose rather than out of emotion. And when people see that kind of control, they respond to it, they admire it, they respect it, often without knowing exactly why. Mental discipline is forged through discomfort. It does not grow in moments of ease or convenience. It is developed in the exact places where most people want to turn away. When things get hard, when emotions are intense, when progress is slow, when distractions are tempting. Those are the moments when the mind is tested, and those who embrace the test instead of fleeing from it become stronger, sharper, and more focused over time. Discipline of the mind is not a talent. It is a choice repeated consistently in the face of adversity. The reason so few people develop strong mental discipline is because it demands self-denial. It asks you to go against what is easy, what is comfortable, what feels good in the moment. It asks you to delay gratification, to ignore the immediate reward in favor of a larger purpose. Most people don't want to do that. They want the outcome without the process. They want the confidence without the challenge. But discipline can only be built through consistent training, and that training often comes disguised as difficulty. Every time you resist an emotional reaction, every time you complete a task you didn't feel like doing, every time you stay committed when you could have quit, your mental muscles grow. Just like physical training, this development requires stress. A mind that is never stretched will never become resilient. When you're tired but still choose to focus, when you're frustrated but still remain calm, when you feel doubt but keep going anyway, those are the moments when mental discipline is being forged, not felt. It doesn't always feel powerful in the moment, but the power accumulates. People who possess mental discipline don't have less emotion, they simply have more control. They're not less tempted by distraction. They've trained themselves to return to what matters. They don't avoid pain, They confront it directly and choose not to be ruled by it. This kind of discipline is earned, not inherited. It's built slowly and painfully in everyday decisions, not in big, dramatic displays. It happens in silence, when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when the only voice urging you forward is your own. Discomfort is the furnace that shapes mental toughness. Whether it's waking up early, having difficult conversations, sitting in silence when your mind wants noise, pushing through boredom during practice, or showing up when motivation is gone, each of these moments carves out a deeper layer of focus and control. The mind is trained like a muscle. It requires repetition, challenge, and rest. If you only engage with life when it feels good or when you're in the mood, discipline will remain out of reach. Mental discipline also requires clarity of purpose. When you don't know what you're aiming for, it's easy to be pulled in every direction. Distractions win, impulses rule, and your time is scattered. But when you have a clear focus, a deep reason for your actions, discipline becomes more natural. You can say no to temporary pleasure because you've said yes to something greater. That clarity fuels your ability to endure discomfort because it reminds you why you're doing it. You're not suffering randomly. You're shaping your mind into something stronger, something more reliable. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about consistency. You won't always win the battle against your emotions. You won't always make the right choice. But every time you realign, every time you return to focus, you reinforce the path. Over time, the gap between intention and action narrows. You begin to trust yourself more, not because you always succeed, but because you always return. That return, that refusal to stay down, is the real measure of discipline. There's a quiet pride that comes from doing the hard thing. It builds a sense of self-respect that no applause can replace. When you endure discomfort for the sake of growth, you begin to see yourself differently. You recognize your own power, not in theory but in practice. You realize that you are capable of more than your feelings would have you believe. Emotions become data, not directives. Distractions lose their grip. The mind becomes an ally rather than an obstacle. The most disciplined people are not those who avoid discomfort, but those who are willing to step into it repeatedly with purpose. They don't chase ease. They chase excellence, and they understand that excellence is born from the ability to suffer wisely, to remain committed even when every part of you wants to escape. That commitment becomes your edge. It separates the average from the extraordinary. It makes you dependable not just to others, but to yourself. Emotional control is the foundation of unshakable willpower. Without control over your emotional state, willpower becomes fragile, unpredictable, and temporary. Emotions, when unchecked, cloud judgment, distort perception, and influence behavior in ways that can sabotage your goals. They lead to impulsive decisions, broken focus, and regret. But when you learn to regulate those emotions, when you can feel anger without acting on it, feel fear without backing down, feel doubt without giving up, you unlock a level of internal strength that most never reach. Willpower is not simply about effort, it's about direction. Energy without control burns out quickly. Emotions like frustration, impatience, envy, and insecurity drain your willpower if you let them run unchecked. But when you notice them, name them, and choose not to obey them, you turn potential distractions into training grounds. You begin to build a system of inner governance. You are no longer a servant to every emotional shift. You become the master, and that mastery fuels your ability to persist through difficulty. Most people believe that willpower is used in big, defining moments. But the truth is, willpower is shaped in the small, daily battles, choosing not to argue when provoked, continuing your work when you feel discouraged, sticking to your standards even when no one is watching. These moments may feel insignificant, but they are the very arena where emotional control is tested. Each time you maintain your composure when you could have reacted, you preserve your energy and sharpen your will. There is a direct link between emotional awareness and lasting power. You can't control what you're not aware of. People who lack emotional control often exhaust themselves, not because the task is hard, but because they waste energy on internal chaos. They ruminate on what they can't change, argue about things that don't matter, and react to every provocation. This mental clutter breaks their focus and depletes their will. But when you develop the discipline to observe your emotional waves without being tossed around by them, your willpower becomes steady and reliable. When emotions are allowed to dictate your behavior, they create patterns that weaken your discipline. Anger becomes avoidance, anxiety becomes procrastination, excitement becomes distraction, but with control, each emotion can be turned into a signal rather than a command. Anger becomes a sign that a boundary may need to be protected. Anxiety becomes a cue to prepare. Excitement becomes motivation that you can channel into meaningful action. The more you respond to emotions with intention rather than impulse, the stronger your willpower becomes. You don't eliminate emotion to gain willpower, you integrate it. You use emotion as fuel, not as a steering wheel. Controlled emotion sharpens your sense of purpose. It reminds you what matters most and keeps your long-term vision alive, especially in times of challenge. People who cannot manage their feelings are often slaves to the moment. They trade progress for relief. They quit when it gets uncomfortable. But those who have trained their emotions stay in the fire without burning out. They adapt, they focus, they endure. Emotional control also protects your consistency. The person who can only act when they feel good will never build anything lasting. There will always be days when you're tired, discouraged, or uninspired. But if you've trained your emotional responses, you can still show up with discipline. You don't need perfect conditions to move forward. Your habits are not driven by mood, they are driven by mission. This detachment from emotional volatility keeps your energy aimed in the right direction. A disciplined mind guards its attention like a fortress. It doesn't allow every thought or feeling to dictate behavior. It chooses what to amplify and what to ignore. Emotional control is the gatekeeper. It decides whether your willpower is spent fighting distractions or directed toward achievement. That clarity, the ability to stay focused amidst noise, is not natural. It is earned through repeated exposure to discomfort without surrender. The more you practice, the more automatic it becomes. You can measure your emotional control not by how you feel, but by how little your feelings disrupt your discipline. When someone offends you and you stay focused, that's emotional strength. When you face a setback and keep working, that's mental power. When you're tempted to give up but don't, not because you feel like continuing, but because you've made a decision, that's real willpower. And that kind of willpower is sustainable because it doesn't rely on ideal conditions or perfect motivation. It relies on the decision to act in alignment with your values, regardless of the emotional weather inside you.